Top of the morning to you, ladies and gentlemen. Let's have our attendees in. Let's start broadcasting this. Yes, a very, very warm welcome to all the attendees. Thank you so much for joining us. This is the 45th day of the lockdown. This is incredible. Could anyone have believed 2 months ago that uh, a country known in the world for its crowds and traffic and vibrance and chaos could just stay in for about a month and a half? And this is a testimony to the fact, and those who have been fortunate enough to stay in, that is a majority of us. And this is a testimony to the fact that a country as big as this can unequivocally unite against a common enemy. So, heartfelt thanks to all of you and for joining us as well. It's a joy to see us, especially in these unprecedented, to see you, especially in these times. Uh, how India's manufacturing can emerge stronger from this crisis. This is the topic of the talk. This is the fourth talk uh, or fourth part of this talk. This series is meant to make this whole discussion positively oriented, to look at solutions, to look at long-term answers to what challenges or long-standing challenges the manufacturing sector faces, and that this is the right time to reflect on those and try and fix them. Let me introduce our esteemed panelists to you. Our panel is inarguably the youngest of all the panelists that we've had so far. And in many ways, our panelists represent the future of the country and the manufacturing industry in particular. We have Swapnil Sansare, CEO and founder of Divide by Zero Technologies, and Mayank Dalmia, Director, Wave Mechanics and Investor at KAHM Capital. Swapnil Sansare, CEO and founder of Divide by Zero Technologies, is a robotics expert turned entrepreneur. He has a rich experience of automation and machine design. Products designed by him at Divide by Zero Technologies have won many excellence awards, and he holds India's first 3D printing technology patent. Divide by Zero Technologies is India's largest industrial 3D printer manufacturer, along with a partner network in India, Malaysia, Germany, and UAE. And we have the other panelist is Mayank Dalmia. As one of the youngest directors in aerospace manufacturing, Mayank leads business development and sales at Wave Mechanics. Wave provides fully finished precision mechanical components and assemblies ready for further integration for specialized applications in the aerospace, electronics, and medical industries. He also manages KAHM Capital, the family office of the KAHM Group, which actively invests in public and private markets around the world. Very welcome, gentlemen. Let's start with Swapnil. Swapnil, what is the situation on the ground?
Hi, good morning, Anand, and good morning, everyone. I think it has been 45th day, as you rightly say. Um, I think situation has been different, a completely different perspective on everything, on life, on manufacturing, on the business, on the relationships, on with customers, vendors, employees. I think it has been, we are, we started on, I think around 24th, it was decided that we will be going through this lockdown, and post that, the, you know, all operations halted. But being in 3D printing industry, suddenly we got a lot of calls and a lot of, support was being asked from medical fraternity, and we had to respond to that on the side, wherein um, we had to actually deliver the 3D printed components to hospitals, certain required medical equipments to our customers. In this time, I think we faced a lot of issues. We have never seen this kind of situation, because supply chain was completely at halt, transportation issues, people traveling. Again, beyond that, how do you, even if you can make, manufacture your products, how do you deliver it to your customer? I mean, that's a bigger problem. But I think to cut it short here, I would say it has been a learning experience in all past 45 days. We have come out of that phase, and we have finally, accepted the change, and then trying to, cope with that for now. Yeah.
Okay. So your facility is in Navi Mumbai, right? I mean, that's
Yes. Yes.
the area of activity, right? Okay. So how hard was it hit, and how hard has it stayed hit, so to speak, in terms of the lockdown and other situations?
So lockdown, pretty much it is there in place. Navi Mumbai, again, we have better situation than Mumbai now, but it's still, the numbers are increasing. So the areas are locked down. In fact, even our office premises area was about to get, they were planning to put it under lockdown, but then somehow, it is not, by God's grace. I mean, somehow. But then I think in terms of this situation here, um, we had to actually go and talk to, initially, I mean, on 24th or so, we had to talk and go to local authorities, talk to them, understand. In fact, as per even from law and order perspective, there was not a lot of clarity that even we had, and even I think many of our partners or people in industry had no idea about how do we start on this, and where do we get permissions from. Either they are coming from local police stations, MIDC, government, and it has been a journey. But then yes, we had to figure it out, because at the end of the day, there was a bigger responsibility on our side. We had to deliver certain ventilator parts, certain face shields that could be 3D printed, certain parts which were used in UV disinfection robots. Um, so we were trying to help on that side. But yes, I think we have now figured it out. But initially, yes, it was very difficult, and I think it was difficult for everyone to understand, as even for government authorities and for us. Yes.
Thank you, Mayank.
First of all, good morning, everyone, and thank you for that kind introduction, Anand.
Thank you.
So just to jump into your question, for us, it's obviously a difficult time. I mean, there's no two ways about it for the entire world and the entire country. And, we are reminded about how unprecedented the times are on a daily basis, right? So I would say that, for the manufacturing industry in particular, this is especially challenging time because, how does a manufacturing business really transition to a digital interface? I mean, sure, there are some activities and functions which move digital and can be done from home, but your core activity of actually producing something can never be digitalized and always needs physical presence. So I think, it's a unique challenge because once that is disrupted, then, why is your company still existing? Given that you have all of these costs that are still running. So I think that it's certainly a challenging time for policymakers as well. India, given our unique position, we are like Europe as a country, right? Different states have different priorities. A policy that may work well in Karnataka may be devastating to a state like Rajasthan or Bihar. So I think, it requires a lot of patience from probably all the stakeholders. Personally speaking, for us at Wave and the rest of the KAHM group, fortunately, I think we are in a sort of stable position today. Of course, we are undergoing a lot of difficulties. But there are certain decisions we've taken, such as not giving any salary cuts or things like that, to sort of alleviate the pain for at least for our employees, where we can control it. Besides that, I would say in terms of morale, there is a lot of uncertainty and insecurity, especially going forward. Given what's going to happen. But I think I am personally positive, and I think that we can emerge from this stronger.
Thank you, Mayank. Uh, so what were the first 10 days like when it was completely new? What was the hardest thing that you had to encounter or manage, and how did you cope up with that?
So for us, of course, being in machining, being a core activity, the first 10 days we were simply shut. Following the lockdown on 23rd, we were given clear directives to, cease all operations. So we weren't actually doing much. So from my side, the challenge was how to transition the sales team, the project team into work from home. Luckily, I would say that that hasn't been too challenging. Although I'm definitely not as upbeat as some of our other luminaries are in terms of believing that work from home is something that can continue. So I would say, the first 10 days were quite worrying because there was absolutely no uh, idea as to when this will end. And yeah, it's a really difficult situation to cope with.
I want to ask this question, just dwell on it for a bit. That for services, we are all aware. We have some family members who are working from home and they have meetings all day, and we are suddenly discovering this official side of them and the jargon they speak and things like that. That's I'm speaking from personal experience. But for manufacturers, obviously, their core activity cannot happen, as you so rightly pointed out. So, given that handicap, how do you bring or how have you brought things together? What were the first strings that you tied together, and then the gradual transition, if it has happened, to activity on the ground? How has the whole and still in process, right? So, can you take us through how phase one, or are we still in phase two, or have we gone to semi-partial opening and lot more hopeful things on the horizon? Can you take us through that process, Swapnil? How was it? And
So I think, as Mayank rightly said, initial 10 days we were as well, even we were shut, and we had no clue, I mean, in terms of what has to be done, where we have to go. Again, I would like to say here that many of the laborers and even our engineers and senior staff, some of the staff, thought that this lockdown is for initial 10, 15 days itself, and they traveled to their native places. Uh, and again, that was one more issue because
correct,
when we thought of starting back again, these guys were locked down in their respective native places, and to bring them back, it's not possible. So
correct.
again, we have to look at our options in terms of what's possible, what we can do. So I think I'm privileged to have amazing team backing me up, and we actually had to ask some of the people working in admin and
Okay,
things that were staying nearby to come and support in the office work, and some of the
okay,
people who were doing actually on the purchase side, on the back end office side, they were actually trying to operate from home, supporting. I mean, digitally, yes, we all were connected, but as you said, it gets difficult. I mean, initially it was very difficult to connect on a digital platform and
okay,
understand. Even in terms of approach, from the mentally, I think no one from the working staff was prepared initially that this is coming and this is here to stay. Like we have to connect this way digitally. I think in one of your early webinars I've seen you said happy connecting.
yeah.
So I think
Thank
connecting this way, again, and coordinating, and I think it's not easy, but then I think I can say that for all of this MSME or SME facility here, that I think we all are coping up, and for us, when we started connecting here on the front end. The rules were changing, the ways of communication were changing. Maybe vendors and even their support and their team, the thing was different. Even we had to support our vendors to tell them that okay, how they can, what is the process to start back. Whether if we have, are working operating as an essential services, and if we need materials, it was very difficult to convince them to start, and then help them up with the documentation part of it, help them up with the processes, finding, and helping them with the transportation options, so on and so forth. but yes, it was definitely an effort. But it's amazing to see how we all can change the roles and come back together. And that's all. I think that's all I can say on here. Like that's the typical human spirit. We evolve and we come back and we start again, rise back. So I think I can see that happening, and I'm very sure I'm looking at this positively.
Okay. So are you able to serve service orders, and what is the degree of the capacity at which you are able to work?
So on the manpower side, I think we are allowed to run in here if you're working as an essential service at 33% capacity. But since our machines are completely automatic, we are still running at around 45 to 50% capacity on the production side. But I think it's still can
Correct.
be optimized because of the whole thing. But yeah, it's at 50%.
Yes, yes. The answer lies in optimization with the existing availability of
Yeah,
capacity, how we can optimize it to the max.
right.
Mayank?
So Anand, just to answer your first question, today, as I mentioned, we are lucky to be up and running with a fair amount of capacity. So let me just walk you through how that happened. So I would say that the step one, in case there's any of our viewers that are still, experiencing a shutdown, step one would be to have a dialogue with your local authorities. So in our case, that was the Directorate of Ministries and Industries here in Karnataka. And given that we are in two sort of essential areas, aerospace as well as medical, all our a lot of our international customers actually never went down because they were always declared as essential in the beginning. So for us, that was the argument which we had to make to the ministries industry, where we kind of had to lobby for ourselves of why we should be given the permission to restart. I think a very big factor here was certainly the ventilator order, which we are currently working on. So that was an order for critical ventilator components, like Swapnil is also involved in. So we were lucky to chance upon this opportunity, which I would say was very critical to getting us back up and running. So in the beginning, we were limited to about only 15% manpower, which is not much, especially in the manufacturing context. But we have been successful. We've delivered a lot of sets, close to 4 digits today. We are also following May 2nd. Now we are operating at about 33%. In terms of machines, again, we are up, we are pushing the 60s, 70s numbers. I would say that a big challenge has been the supply chain, definitely, because whereas we are up and running and, we were lucky enough to have a lot of raw materials stocked, but, for our counterparts that didn't have raw material in place or tooling in place, even if you could start, there was not much you could do, right? A critical process in our value chain is special process and surface treatment, for example. So that is somewhere where we've only just now started to see some relief. Our partners have been able to come on this week, and now they are finally starting to become productive after dealing with their early teething issues.
Okay.
So I would say that it's been a mixed bag journey. Certainly, some have emerged better than the others. But I think with the current situation, I think most people should be able to come back online in some form or the other.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That's very insightful. Now let's talk about the essential supplies part of it, which is not only interesting, it is critical in today's science. And both of you are servicing such orders, ventilators, and other critical supplies. Before I ask this question, and I'll urge you to start from what you're doing in your company's capacity and then take it to the larger picture. But just to give you or share with you what, as you know better than me, as to what is happening on the PPE front, um, that globally there is a scarcity. In India, India has been facing the scarcity, and in the US, which, as you know, it used to outsource all its PPE, most of its PPE requirement, had to do it on a war footing, and they had to do it domestically. But even that has not been solved, and China supplies, as I read, have not only been rejected in India, for example, but China has put in place its own requirements so that its image is not dented further, which has again created another, round or wave of paucity of PPEs. So amid all this revision, I read an encouraging news today that India has become the second largest manufacturer of PPEs. Although very few publications carried it, and it's not been I haven't seen it being corroborated by other publications, but any good news will do at this point. Uh, and other thing that I wanted to add maybe later was that what the doctors are facing and the way they are dealing with this thing is, you know, heart-rending. I mean, they have to wear PPEs for days and hours and days on end, and like medieval soldiers, as we discussed, in the practice session, that they have to wear diapers and keep on PPEs because of the shortage of this material, and that's really, uh, you know, emotionally overwhelming, to see our doctors on the battlefront. So anyway, so with that large introduction, with such an important topic, so Swapnil, can you start with what you are doing on that front from your company's perspective, and then I'll go to Mayank, and then we talk about the bigger picture, and do add your perspective as you wish.
Sure. So I think, yes, I think first thing in terms of PPE requirement was, I think, one was face shields, face masks, and then they needed full body suits and so on and so forth. So there was a large requirement for sure. And in terms of shortages, yes, I mean, even doctors, when they try and find, the sources for these kind of, so they need eye protection as well as protection as mask and all. Um, there was a movement, open source movement, which was happening all across globe,
Hmm.
wherein people were, trying and helping each other design PPEs, open source PPEs, which can be 3D printed and quickly delivered. So,
Hmm.
and 3D printing being a technology wherein you do not need a particular type of raw material, it's a standard raw material required to make everything and anything on 3D printing technology, or not particular tooling which is required to make that.
Hmm.
So we are not dependent. I mean, we are, yes, dependent on on supply chain to some extent for raw material and particular, but not customized tooling. So that added a lot of value, and we could actually deliver face shields, face masks, and these requirements started coming in from local hospitals, government hospitals, wherein they were handling COVID patients. They had no idea where it is going to be coming from. Local institutes, IIT Bombay, again, and nearby education institutes, which were trying to
Okay.
design these kind of PPE supporting equipments. And I think a lot of innovation as well happened in between this. I mean, there was some very small device called ear pressure reliever, which was developed by one of some of the engineers. Um, Again, because doctors have to wear these masks all day,
Wow.
and it becomes very difficult for them to carry. Uh, so pressure relievers were developed. They were 3D printed. They were delivered to the hospitals. Then I think we also moved to UV disinfection boxes, UV disinfection robots, and this is again happening with the partnership between education institutions, again, and government plus other industry fellows. And this is again one more project which is coming through, wherein you have a robot which has a large UV lamp mounted on it, and which
Okay.
goes through the different rooms or hospitals, areas, and sanitizes these areas, disinfects with vectors. So UV lamps and UVC lamps are known for, and they've proven that they can kill bacteria and viruses, and for that matter as well coronavirus. So this is again something which has come up. So there is a lot of innovation happening on back end front. You, as you said, we have these frontliners who are running, and doctors and and medical workers. But behind the line, I think we also have a lot of engineers sitting there, there were a lot of groups made on Telegram, WhatsApp, and people started communicating, like what all supply chain options are available, what all, engineering options are available. Doctors and engineers from across the globe, I was, and I think many of us were on those groups, and a lot of us contributed and, made these designs available. We call it distributed manufacturing. So once those designs were made available, we could actually send it to many partners across the globe, and they can actually make those parts on their 3D printer, or for that matter, CNC machines, and make these parts. So that started happening, distributed manufacturing, because of the shortage on the supply chain and the overall transportation issues. But yeah, as I said again, it's a collaborative contribution as an open source community, which is coming together and then delivered by and front-ended by companies like us. Yeah.
Thanks, Swapnil. Mayank?
Firstly, I want to say big congrats to Swapnil for being so involved in the fight in so many different ways. The question of PPE is a very interesting one. For us, all of us in the manufacturing industry, as Swapnil rightly mentioned, we've seen so much positivity. We've seen, collaboration across the world, distributed manufacturing, as Swapnil just mentioned. We've seen, open source designs being given away for free, experts helping out manufacturers for free. So from my perspective, there's a big surprise here, actually, because I feel like, when it comes to PPE, certain things have been cracked. Like if you look at face shields, if you look at masks, these things have been cracked. It's not a complicated process to manufacture this. You don't need too much to make this. And personally, we've seen a lot of our partners, get involved in such production, producing in the hundreds daily. So what has been really surprising for me is to see the fact that it's not reached hospitals, it's not reached medical professionals. So I'm not sure what is going on here exactly. Is there a disconnect somewhere? Because I personally know of doctors that are involved in, fighting COVID, and they are, as you rightly mentioned, in very dire straits. They are as if a medieval knight dressing up for battle, where you burden yourself for the day. You wear an entire suit, and then, you only get relief at night when the battle is over. So that is really quite a tragedy that, we're seeing medical professionals get infected. We're hearing about, cases where medical professionals and nurses are being shunned in the society. This is something which needs, major addressing from the government side. And another thing which would be great to see is them solving this issue of getting the equipment which is clearly being made into the right hands. Instead of, let's say, symbolic gestures like showering petals on a hospital.
Thank you for bringing that up, man. That point, please continue. But I just wanted to say thank you for bringing that up. That, just indicative measures will not help, or ritualistic measures will not help. And we'll have to go deeper into the battle to face this thing. And you are servicing orders of ventilator parts or ventilators, right? Please share that with us.
Yeah, so for us, there's been a lot of work going on here. We are pretty much working on some critical metal components, as is our core activity. So things like manifolds, pumps, all of these. We hope to supply close to about 30,000 sets in the next few months. We have already, well on our way to doing that. I would say that initially there was a lot of focus on this. Today, the need for ventilators is a big question mark because, the story that we were fed from, the mainstream media, let's say, was that there would be an exponential growth in cases, hospitals would be overloaded and flooded, ventilators running out of capacity. Touch wood, I believe that we have not seen something this drastic come into our country. In fact, if you go to your nearby hospital, you'll most likely find that it's empty. So we've been hearing across the economy and across major cities, except for, let's say, Mumbai, uh, hospitals are actually running with no business. We are now looking at financial loss.
Okay.
Ventilators are going unused. So
Okay.
I
I didn't
think
know that.
while the policy response, at least when it came to critical equipment, was great, the government was very quick to move. We have agencies to thank like BEL and BEML that really facilitated this process. And for us personally, they were very involved in helping us get going and getting the right permissions. So that was a very big silver lining. But I think luckily, touch wood, the situation hasn't gotten so bad that a lot of the stuff we're working on has not come into use.
Okay. On the point of ventilators, and we have an attendee who wants to ask the question that I was coming to. But before that, I wanted to ask you, Mayank, since you're working on ventilator components, that personally, obviously, being a non-medical professional, I do not know what a ventilator actually making it entails and what its components are. But my curiosity is that how sophisticated facility is it required to make ventilators? Because in the US, uh, the President Trump asked their auto industry to start making ventilators and mass produce them, for example. So can our units be converted into facilities for making ventilators and their components? Or do we need specialization for that? So I needed your perspective on that. Right.
So Anand, I mean, the short answer is absolutely. We can definitely rejig ourselves to produce items like ventilators. Again, just touching upon what I was saying before, we've seen, especially on the aerospace and defense side, we've seen pretty much companies like Lockheed, companies in the UK, across the board, successfully producing their own ventilator designs, or working on open source designs and getting them out.
Okay.
So I do think it's very much possible for various different types of industries to set up and produce these items. That being said, of course, there is a lot of complexity. These are not simple devices to produce.
Okay.
Especially when you add the criticality that they are being hooked on to a human being. That's where the complication comes in because, okay, great, you might have a functioning model, but one of the aspects of anything health related is regulation and certification. So
Correct.
here in India, and I think Swapnil may agree with me, in these WhatsApp groups that were created, Telegram groups, WhatsApp groups, a big roadblock which everyone was running into was, hey, how do we get our design certified? Who's the right, body to actually walk us through this process? So there were a lot of question marks which have still not been resolved. So I believe, like in India, you can't just simply come up with your own design, test if it works, and then start selling it. It doesn't work like that for medical products. You need to have a stamp of quality. There's various tests and checks that it needs to go through. So I feel that is one area which we could definitely improve on. The regulatory framework for approving medical devices at a mass
Correct.
scale.
That is very helpful. Kapil, you want to add to that? Perfect.
Yeah, I think whatever I completely agree with Mayank that it's about I mean, if you look at bigger brands, they already have. I mean, if they are manufacturing PPEs or if they are already doing this, they already had these approvals and certifications so as to manufacture these equipments. But I think right now, if you see, many of these essential item manufacturers are companies which were not doing this previously are getting in this manufacturing zone for the first time. So yes, there is lack of clarity in terms of where do you get the certification from. So maybe in terms of say a particular UV device that you are making. So is it ICMR that will certify this, or is it going to be any other body? And where do we go? So there is definitely clarity is required here, so as to we can speed up this manufacturing here in India and beyond India as well. I'm very sure there is a global market for the products that we are making and manufacturing
Correct.
that can be explored. But I think we, from government perspective, we need this complete clarity on the side of certification and approvals. Yes,
I really hope, yes, yes. I really hope people in policy circles watch this, and at least from our side, we'll try and get it far and wide for this to be. It's so true that even globally, there's so much demand and need. More than the demand, there is so much of a dire need for such supplies. And India is in this position of having the talent and the resources to do it, but the compliance part needs to be fast tracked. So true. We have Vijay Dubey. Mr. Dubey has a question, similar question. I'll unmute Mr. Dubey so you can talk to him. Mr. Dubey, can you hear us?
Yeah.
How are you doing?
Good. This is the first time basically I'm attending your webinar here.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for being here. Which
Yeah.
part of the country are you from?
Mumbai.
Mumbai. What kind of work or your work background?
We are basically into AIDC, that is Automatic Identity Data Capture Solutions, which includes barcoding and tracking devices.
Okay. How is it with your work, your business? How is it going? Obviously, the question is rhetorical. We all know how the situations are, but how are you? How are you coping up with it and your colleagues?
For the moment, obviously, everybody knows that it's kind of a little stagnated, kind of. I mean, of course, by the virus conditions. So slowly and steadily, things are getting lifted up, but still there are a lot of issues which we face. And as far as the materials and supplies are also concerned, which are kind of trickling in, I won't say that things are available, but kind of hard to get.
Okay. So have you been able to speak to the authorities, negotiate your way the way Mayank and Swapnil have been able to do to some extent?
No, not exactly.
Okay. Your question to the panelists?
Basically, if I am allowed to, put the question. Basically, one is for Swapnil,
Yes,
and one is for Mayank.
Yes.
Though on the hindsight, Swapnil and Mayank have actually covered the particular topic, but still, Swapnil, why do we still see the lack of visibility of PPE manufacturers in India? Would like to have your perspective on its, infrastructure, the quality regulations, etc. And the whole challenge is we always recollect the, bigger brands like the 3M and the Honeywells, etc. Can I put the question for Mayank also, or should I wait?
Yes. So let's
The
start
other
with
question,
Swapnil.
yeah.
Let's address one question. Yes, Swapnil.
Okay. So I think in terms of PP manufacturers, we have companies here in India like Venus, Magnum, and again on different levels there are different companies doing this. But yes, there is lack of visibility. I think here I would like to say even media has to play this role now, and as well cover these back-end heroes and these companies, and talk about them, what's happening there, what are the kind of difficulties, and I think what you guys are doing here, Anand, is really commendable. But I think here the regulation, yes, as I was saying, and even Mayank said, that there is lack of clarity. There is a lot of effort you have to put in to reach out to the authorities to understand what kind of process you need and whether that process is possible, because sometimes you need approvals, and wherein person has to visit and to a particular test facility. That test facility needs to be made available, and making everything work in this short time span and in current situation is difficult. So I think what we have is either these brands like 3M or Honeywell, which have their existing proven products which are moving in the market. Another thing that can work maybe is licensing designs and processes from these kind of companies, and then maybe government can come in and work on this, which can enable a lot of other small companies to actually produce more and more PPEs. So that's something that can work. But yes, I think it's growing. Government will also take some efforts towards certification and the standardization of this process. And beyond this, yes, infrastructure-wise, you cannot manufacture PPE or any such equipment in a standard manufacturing setup. It requires a particular kind of environment and the setup and the machinery and ensuring everything is clean. What we call it as clean room environments. You know, so this is something which is required. But how fast and how quickly we can adopt and bring in and that infrastructure is also required. But I can see that happening now, and also government is looking at this. Yeah, but this is my take on it.
Thank you, Swapnil. Mayank?
My take would be that, as I touched upon earlier, I think that the manufacturing industry itself has done a fairly good job. We may not have the brand names at the level of 3M and Honeywell, but some of the companies that Swapnil mentioned have done a pretty damn good job. I think the problem really lies in distribution, is my hunch, because again, I feel like the product is ready. It's just not reaching the right points of sale. It's not reaching the right people. In terms of, from a branding perspective, brand visibility, that's something, general, you can kind of stretch that question generally for all of Indian manufacturing. That I think is more about, marketing and communications. So I don't think that traditional Indian manufacturing businesses have ever seen these as an important area to spend time on. So perhaps, that is something that can be relooked at, that how do I increase my messaging and how do I increase my connect with my users?
Correct. Yeah. Mr. Dubey, does that answer your second part of the question? Was the second part about the price that you wrote in your question?
Yeah, 90% have been answered, but trying to look at in the view of perspectives on the cost part of it. And
Yes,
actually, it was very surprising when I kind of, spoke to one of my business colleagues in a different vertical. And I said, okay, why aren't we promoting the Indian digital non-contactable, thermometers, which are kind of in use right now? His prompt reply was, okay, the Indian brands are very, very costly. And in fact, they were promoting Chinese brands. So I would just like to have a kind of a view or a perspective on this.
These are the fever guns in common parlance, right?
Right.
Okay. Swapnil?
I think there were two perspectives to this, and I've seen this because some of these they're called pyrometers. Basically, these are infrared thermometers which are used. I think one perspective is in Indian industry we had a ready industrial pyrometers which were available, but those were industrial. Because I know about these because we use these kind of devices in our 3D printers. On laser sintering side. So and then there were Chinese again products or other products available at very, very low cost. I think it's also to do with the volumes at which these were produced in China, and already I think China had the setup and they were already ready somehow to make those more the tooling part of it, the electronics part of it. And for us, I think in terms of if we talk about Indian brands, first is, are we comparing industrial product with a commercial one? Second is in terms of supply chain difficulties and transportation issues amidst that, getting everything to manufacture and a product like that, even if it seems smaller and much compact, needs a lot of different components, mechanical, electronics, and a lot of assemblies together. So bringing all that together, I think takes a lot of effort for now. But as the numbers go higher, and I think definitely we will also be able to compete there. And I think there are a lot of our customers who are trying to build these kind of equipment and even digital thermometers now, which I can see will very well compete with say other countries' brands, with Chinese brands or any other.
Thank you, Swapnil. Mayank?
The pricing issue, I think, Mr. Vijay, it's from my perspective a relatively simple answer, where you see, the companies that have been making these devices They know the product. This is not something which has just come up in COVID, but it's been going on historically. So they have an established supply chain for it. All of their costs have been optimized. They know the distribution network. They have pricing power over anybody who's just gotten this product developed. Just put yourself in the shoes of a medium-sized or small-sized Indian manufacturer. First, you spent money developing the product. Then you spent money finding the suppliers and getting the various BOM items in your facility. All of these have come at a higher than normal cost, given the current context and the need and the speed of the need for the speed. So finally, you're going to end up with a product that is not competitive because you're not enjoying any of the economies of scale that a traditional manufacturer that's making this product has enjoyed. So I think it really just boils down to that.
Great. Mr. Dubey, does that answer your question?
Yeah. Thank you to Mayank and Swapnil. Thank you very much.
Okay. My best wishes to you and your colleagues.
Thank you.
Take care. So that brings us to, and we spoke about the cost issue and the volumes issue. So that brings us to the second segment of our questionnaire. We have about half an hour of the stock left, which is not much, given that we have so much to talk about. So I'll quickly talk about, let's say, a couple of issues first. What are the thing is, as you know, COVID brings up or hits those people the hardest who have underlying issues, and that is a metaphor for our industry as well. So some industries are hit harder than others because they've had long-standing issues. So the idea is right now to also reflect on what have been the problems, and this is also a time to correct a lot of those issues. So can we just line up, let's say, one or two major things as to one, the biggest thing is why industrial revolution has not taken off. Industrial revolution is a big word, a big term, I understand that. But let's say make in India, despite the good intentions behind it, it's not taken off, number one. And related question is that, the cost, quality, and delivery part, the branding part that you guys spoke about, the communications. Why are Indian products not known for the three attributes that any good industry should be known for? Cost, quality, and delivery, to quote Mr. Goswami, who appeared in our last webinar. So first question is, why Make in India could not take off the way it could? Let's start from Swapnil.
I think from the perspective, in terms of, so there are multiple issues on this. One is that adoption of the technology part of it, per se, Industry 4.0, and using the technology, and we look at the technology as a typical Indian manufacturer is being on that side. We always look at it as something which is a cherry on the cake, something which is something fancy and not really and more
automation and digitalization. Yes. So, sorry to interject, but the point that a lot of people who we interview make is that we have the labor arbitrage, which is something that has been dismantled in these times. But because of which automation does not take place. Right. So that's the conundrum that people have when we talk about automation, right?
Yeah.
So how do people make the balance? That is a question, but the larger point remains that automation is one reason, or lack of automation is one reason that Make in India could not succeed the way it should have.
So I think yes, and beyond that, I think our perspective towards the product that we are making, manufacturing processes, adopting, and I think the larger, currently the major issue that we all will be looking at is cash flow issues for everybody, every company. And again,
so this is the present time. Sorry, I'm getting into this because the thing is we have transitioned very quickly from the micro thing perspective to a very macro perspective. I get that. So I need to get us out of that zone. So the thing is, in the last 3-4 years of time frame, despite all good intentions, the industry was contracting for some months and then, going ahead and growing for a couple of months and then again 2 steps back. So it was struggling to get on track. So what were the issues that ailed this whole Make in India buzz? Couple of issues that aid. One, for example, is that we are very much dependent on a couple of sectors, like on the auto sector or the government sector. We are not well diversified. That could be one reason. I don't know. You guys are in the thick of action.
No, I think in terms of yes, again we were totally dependent on auto sector here in even for 3D printing. Again, for our industry as well, the 70% consumption happens from auto sector, and even for a lot of manufacturing tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 vendors or manufacturers are manufacturing for auto sector. And I think eventually auto sector was in a state of confusion because
correct
coming in, EV was coming in, and
true,
there was a lot of changes happening back to back. And I think towards quarter 1 or quarter 2 last year, this whole thing started coming in. And we could also see that, so there was a lot of sense of confusion on the side where is this whole thing going, and what needs to be made and what needs to be delivered, and in terms of so this whole thing when we look at, I believe diversification is required in terms of manufacturing. We completely understood right now in this situation that even if we are manufacturing for auto industry, like what Mayank is doing, we can also make ventilator parts. If we are making a 3D printer or an EV component, we can also make a robot component which can actually help in medical industry.
Correct.
So I think we all need to look at serve the basic requirements, and also to say a lot of we are dependent on other countries and other companies outside India for a lot of our supply chain basic requirements. Even to say right now for making these printers or CNC machines, we are dependent largely on German companies or some of the Chinese manufacturers, some of the again Italian manufacturers, but then we need to be self-sufficient in that way, and within the country itself we can actually manufacture these components which are required by the supply chain or where we are going outside. But and we can have really amazing businesses and growing businesses. I believe that.
These are some excellent points. Thank you. Mayank?
So I wanted to answer the question of why did Make in India sort of not take off. It's quite a complex one, and you ask 5 different people, you get 5 different answers.
Yeah.
But what I feel is it's a combination of issues. When it comes to automation, for example, I can give you a very simple answer for why we have not pursued any high degree of automation. The answer is cost of capital. It's simply not financially viable for us to invest in automation, given that you have plenty of supply of labor. Of course, there are negatives to not investing in automation, which we've experienced in the last 2 months. But the case for automation is not yet too compelling in my eyes, given the financial viability of it. When it comes to other reasons, there are so many. I mean, we can touch upon the fact that productivity of the manufacturing business in India is not as high as the peer countries around. I'm not talking about developed nations, but I'm talking about emerging nations. You take China, you take today, like for example, aerospace. We compete heavily with countries like Morocco, Tunisia, Romania, Poland. So these are actually countries that you may be surprised to hear, but they are as cost effective as we are. So especially given that they probably have a slightly higher educated base of labor, they are able to eke out some amount of productivity from a greater amount of productivity from the labor force. So for us in India, I think there are 2 broad areas that need a lot of work. One is in the area of R&D. So, there's been there's been too much focus on being a low cost a low-cost led manufacturing power here in India. I think we need to start moving away from being, low-cost driven into some other thing, value-driven, either it's competence-driven, because how long? It's a diminishing game. If you continue competing on cost, it's only a matter of time before other emerging nations rise up and undercut you. So I think there needs to be a focus on R&D. Organizations need to take a long-term view, bite the bullet, start spending money on innovation, start moving away from just being contract manufacturers, try to get into the products, try to, disrupt. We need to look at things like international collaborations, technology partnerships. These are all areas where there should be an increased focus. The other area which I think has, hamstrung a lot of SMEs as well as large corporates would probably be in the area of, flexibility of manufacturing when it comes to labor. You've seen in countries like the UK, Ireland, the US, governments are pretty much paying 70 to 80% of your workforce's pay, during the lockdown period. So, that's a very strong signal from the government that, hey, we are here to help the economy and help the industry. We are yet to see something of that scale in India, of course, and I'm not advocating for such a move in India, but there is definitely something that needs to be done because, if you're a manufacturing company, you're not producing anything, but then you're being forced to maintain your entire cost base with absolutely no change, that's simply not viable. So, as an SME owner, I'm sure a lot of people have been questioning why they are even doing this in the last 1 month, because the odds seem stacked up against you, right? As a country, although we want to be democratic capitalist, we tend to always veer towards being socialist. So we kind of need to bite the bullet and really look for major reforms when it comes to manufacturing. Given that almost 20 to 30% of the country's workforce is directly or indirectly affected here, so we really need to focus on efficiency gain, productivity gain, flexibility for business owners to really take a long-term approach when it comes to their capital allocation.
That's so true. Some great points there. Is my voice echoing?
No, it's fine.
No, it's fine.
Also, Anand, just to add one last point is access to capital. So I'm not sure, Swapnil, how you have been managing your cash flows and whether you have banking partners, but I would definitely say that is an area that also could improve quite a bit. Here, as you know, we are either stuck with your NBFCs that are extremely aggressive, or you're stuck with your traditional banks, which are, on the other side, they're extremely conservative, especially lending to an SME. I can take myself, for example, someone that doesn't have, 20 years of experience. For me, when I go talk to a banker and I say, hey, these are my plans, please lend me money and, you'll make a great return, he's immediately skeptical and, he does not want to take the risk personally and disburse this type of a loan. So I think there needs to be a view from the government side that, hey, if we have to be a manufacturing powerhouse, globally, then we need to support the businesses. I mean, SME owners cannot be left out in the cold to fend for themselves. So they need capital support, they need flexibility in labor, things like this. I think it's very essential.
You mentioned something about SME definition. Yes, Swapnil, you were saying something. Please.
No, I said I completely agree with Mayank on this. And in fact, there have been certain facilities made available by SIDBI or any other such government organizations. But here again, it's very difficult to get through. The process is tedious and longer, and more than that, the kind of situation we are in. Gather all those documents together and start working on it, and then go back and forth. It becomes very difficult. Right now, yes, that's capital is major issue, right?
In this day and age of digitalization, is getting all the documents and all the papers in place is one question, and then it's not really a very encouraging thing to hear. Mayank, you spoke about the definition of SMEs, and I think the government indicated that it wanted to do something in the next stimulus announcement. So can you tell us about that?
Yes, absolutely. So what I was touching upon was the definition of SMEs within manufacturing. So, when it comes to calculating it by revenue, that's quite comfortable. For a medium-sized company, I believe it's something like 250 crores is the cap. But when it comes to capital investment, so again, 10 crores is the cap, I believe, that the moment you cross 10 crores in capital investment, you are considered a large industry. So I can say that, for a company like myself, that is certainly detrimental, given the fact that an SME enjoys certain benefits that large companies don't enjoy. I think this needs a relook. We need to, create a favorable condition for medium and small size manufacturers rather than increasing the pressure on them. So some policy change to this effect would be much welcomed. I believe that the government does have an intent to do this, and it's just a matter of having the bill passed through the various systems.
Okay. Anything you want to add to that, Swapnil?
I think I agree with Mayank on this, because if we are looking at manufacturing sector growing, they will have to invest more and more on the capital side, but they also need support, and it's required. I suppose when you invest more into the capital good, and then you do not enjoy MSME facilities or the possibilities. I think that's where the growth can have larger effect. So I agree with what Mayank has to say, and change is required here.
Okay. So speaking of regulation, one interesting thing that has happened is that in the context of the migration or migrants exodus that we've seen, one particular state has nearly abolished labor laws. All laws that were in place, and overnight has done some labor reforms that policy makers have been talking about for years. But I don't understand how this is going to pan out. I mean, suddenly laborers can be hired and fired, and there are a lot of protections, good or bad. That's another debate. But the sudden transition into a completely labor law free environment. So the idea obviously is that the migrants have all returned home, and the idea is to capitalize on this situation and make this some sort of a manufacturing haven. The thing I want to ask you guys is that, is this going to work? The idea is to get business, and suddenly, in absence of any other measure, merely abolishing all the labor laws, are they going to work, make a place a manufacturing hub? Swapnil, can you throw light on this?
I think if you look at Maharashtra, of course, in Mumbai and nearby industries as well, here 50% or maybe more than that, workforce has migrated back to their respective hometowns. There will be issues, and you will have to quickly, if you have to evolve, you have to retain labor, you have to ensure that you're assuring them pay, you're giving them some facilities, and a lot of companies are doing this. But as you said, there are some areas wherein certain labor laws are being applied, wherein you can hire and fire quickly. And
Correct.
I think it's everyone's perspective.
But are they going to suddenly get business that is going to Vietnam and other places? Is that going to happen? Suddenly you don't have any labor laws, and suddenly the manufacturing hubs are going to be created. Is that how it's going to pan out?
No, I don't think that will work, because if you don't have labor laws, I mean, at the end of the day, there needs to be certain assurance for the laborers as well, in terms of their job assurance, in terms of basic requirements to be fulfilled at this condition. And if there is suddenly a corona outbreak at that particular facility, and if there is nobody to look at them and support, I think it's a time when we all should look at how we can grow together rather than individual benefit, and look at how only entrepreneurs or businesses can make money and leaving laborers aside. But looking at the another side, flip side to this is also that laborers are not available. They are moving from one place to another quickly, and again there are a lot of issues they have to face. Even in Mumbai and nearby areas and nearby industrial hubs, we have seen that many laborers were not allowed to stay in the nearby villages because they were going back and working in the factory. So as you were saying, coming back to what you're saying, is yes, the abrupt hiring and firing and these kind of laws are not going to help for sure from my perspective, because it has to be a win-win proposition for everyone here to
Great.
have a successful business.
Great perspective. Mayank?
Anand, what I think is that, it's definitely not a good idea to simply scrap these laws. I think that would be a step too far, certainly. These laws are there to protect the people that are, really at the bottom of the pyramid. And we cannot begin, I think all three of us in this room cannot begin to imagine the strife that, people at that strata face. So certainly the answer is not to simply scrap all laws. That being said, again, I think it comes down to what is our intention as a country. Do we want to be competitive at a global scale? Do we want to be, not just in terms of cost, but in terms of quality, in terms of innovation? If the answer to that is yes, then I think there needs to be a very clear definition that the onus of people welfare should be on the government. The onus of efficiency and productivity should be on the company. So for that to happen, a company needs to be free to take certain actions which may not be popular. That's not to say that those people that are affected by this action should then be just swept aside and put in the cold. That's when the government has to sweep in.
Yes.
If imagine a picture in America where this happened, and the U.S. government said, "Sorry, you can't terminate anyone, you can't furlough anyone." It would be unimaginable. Right? We've seen the numbers, the data is with us. 33 million people have lost their jobs in the US in the last 2 months alone. At the same time, you've seen the government step in a way that was completely unprecedented.
Absolutely.
You have the central bank, which is basically giving you a blank check saying, hey, I'll
Yes.
do to support large industries. You have the government depositing $1,200 into every citizen's bank account. Universal basic income, which is what this is, was something which was just being debated in classrooms and universities.
Yes.
And suddenly in 2 weeks, we've seen it, come into force and actually money in people's bank accounts. So that sort of government action is, what I'm envious of. Again, I know that
I'm with you on that position completely.
Yeah, I know India is a much more complex beast, and there's no clear cut winners or losers here. There's always certainly going to be some losers. But I definitely feel that the onus of efficiency and productivity should be on the companies, which means that some ugly things need to happen. To answer your second question, what will happen? Let's say labor laws are scrapped, companies are allowed to do whatever they wish. Will there be an immediate impact? The answer is no, because as we all know, these are all just cost-related issues. Suddenly having 50% of your workforce is not going to make your product better. It's not going to, maybe it improves your price, but it's not going to improve your quality or your delivery or the level of product. But what it would help in is it would help in companies becoming more efficient. It would help in, long-term investments, because the company is making more money, it's then being allowed to deploy it back into the company.
Correct.
When we talk about automation, if somebody is operating at, 10%, 12% margin, net margin in this country, automation is a distant dream because the cost of capital itself is, close to that number, if not more. So then innovation is just left in the hands of a few that are really good companies operating at extremely high levels of operating margins. So in order to improve all those things, yes, it would have a positive effect. Not in the short
Correct.
term, but definitely in the long term.
Absolutely. That's great insight. And to add to what you just said, that access to capital and a more conducive environment in terms of regulations and compliance, these growth factors also need to be in place for labor reforms to work. And they on their own will not be able to work. Let's say if there is a law and order situation in a place, so entrepreneurs will not set up units even though labor is plenty or
Mhm.
abundant. So yes, yes, absolutely. Now I come to this question that I ask every panelist. We are almost at the close of the discussion. Um, so there is this movie, or was this movie called Nayak, the Real Hero, or the remake of a Tamil movie, and politically it was very, you know, much talked about. But I want to bring it to manufacturing. So if you guys individually are made the CEO of India's manufacturing for one day, and you don't have to worry about constraints and sky is the limit as to whatever you think will be done. So what are the top decisions you will make to transform India's manufacturing to a global force to reckon with, global powerhouse? So let's start with Swapnil. You are the
Uh,
CEO for a day.
yes. So I think first thing would be uh, education side on the technologies, what is required, what is needed, making that data available to the entrepreneurs and the manufacturing sector, that what needs to be manufactured and which is required and where is the gap, and making that data very very clearly available to all the manufacturers. I think second, I would say in terms of you know, as Mayank was discussing, and we all agreed on that. In terms of support, capital, based support, and some regulations which help entrepreneurs set up their businesses quickly and invest into capital goods and boost their manufacturing. Third, I would look at the, the marketing side of it. How well is it marketed? How well we can ensure the you know the businesses or whatever we are manufacturing here in India is very well known to the world, and how we can increase that reach. And fourth, on the I would say, no, again, knowledge sharing and awareness and a lot of drives. I would look at initiating on the standards and manufacturing practices, and total quality management side, which wherein government organizations can actually go and help these entrepreneurs, and it becomes a basic benchmark to have again, ISO and all that are very basic, but towards the CE and EN standards and accepting all these European and American standards and making India export ready.
Okay.
So,
Yes,
so
yes.
I think that is something that I will be looking at.
We'll be looking at. Mayank?
So we've already touched upon, a bunch of points like access to capital and labor reform and things like this. So I won't spend too much time on that. The first thing I would say, and please take everyone, I hope everyone takes this in a light-hearted manner, but I would tell the entire industry to stop over-promising and under-delivering. I think this is a uniquely Indian
Attribute, yes.
Completely agree. Completely.
where somebody,
Yes,
you
yes,
have
yes, it will be done.
American or somebody from Europe who's like, hey, I need XYZ. Can you do this?
Right.
And the manufacturer internally can only probably do 60% of X, 20% of Y, and he doesn't even know what Z is. And he'll be, yes,
Yes,
I can
yes.
do it, sir. Give me,
Yeah.
give me the order and I will do it.
And in his mind is, thinking as to how, whether I'll be able to do it or not, making all calculations. But then, yes, it will be done. on the
Yes,
outside?
so I think this needs to be changed because at least personally, I've experienced this a lot in my meetings abroad, where that's the first thing I'm told that look, our experience in India has been negative because we were promised certain things. The reality on the ground was completely different to this picture. So I think that is certainly a focus area where we need to really, become realistic with what we are offering. I think we have, again, it's probably a cultural issue where we, as they say, guest is God. So we have that approach of being, wanting to please somebody who's, we are offering a service to. But ultimately, we need to, be confident in what we can do well and do that well. So I would certainly say there needs to be a little more honesty from the side of Indian manufacturing. Besides this, I would certainly agree with Swapnil when it comes to marketing and communication. That is an area which, again, there's a lot that can be done from the Indian manufacturing company side. Our inherent strength as a country is the fact that we speak English. That is why we are, known as, oh, we may be a future superpower. Let's say that was not in the picture, then I don't think anyone would be talking about India being a future superpower. So we need to, now capitalize on this benefit. Get out there, communicate effectively to a customer. What exactly can you do? What can you not do? Who are you? Use all the digital tools that are available today to us. I don't think anybody can today make an excuse for not having an active Marcom, business going on. They should be talking to their customers. They should be, keeping them abreast of what are the issues on the ground. Because let's be frank, if you're a foreign company like somebody sitting in the U.S. or in Europe, and you're looking at a manufacturing hub like China or India, you know what you're getting. You're technically getting better infrastructure in China. You're probably getting better quality. In terms of price, okay, people say China is becoming less competitive, but again, you'll be surprised. They are still quite competitive in many areas. When you
Correct.
come to India, our key strength is the fact that we speak English. So we really need to use this more. And I think the current context gives us a huge opportunity to do this. There's a lot of mistrust today towards China. There's a lot of, thought process of supply chains moving out of China. So I think it's the perfect storm for India to jump in, raise their hands, and be like, "Hey, look, we are, we're a democratic nation that speaks English. Please work with us, partner with us. Don't think about us as a low-cost base. Sure, that's the entry point. That's how the business will start. But there needs to be a vision for being more than just a low-cost player."
A great, great positive message to end this discussion with. Uh, Before we wrap this up, I'd request each of you to share what you feel about the situation, what you feel your peers in the industry should do to cope up and come out stronger out of this thing. So, what would you like to say to your peers in the industry as to how to face and uh, triumph this situation or emerge stronger from this situation? Swapnil, what will be your message to your peers?
I think here, past 30 days, we have been working, and I realized one thing is that uh, the businesses are not going to be the same now. The demand is going to shift. As it's said in the book called "Who Moved My Cheese?" The cheese has moved now, and
Tell me about
yeah, and we all need to look at where it is going and what's happening. The world is not going to be the same. The communication, the job roles, the processes, the way transactions will happen. I think we all need to take this into account and think about remodeling our businesses. Um, uh, and I think the businesses will move from manufacturing some uh, normal required products to life-saving products, to something which is bare minimum required, which is driven by supply chain issues, which is driven by transportation issues. So we all need to keep an eye there and start as I was previously saying, and and even what Mayank has done, that you have a machining setup which now was maybe earlier serving another industry, and now it can serve medical as well. So we'll have to look at all these possibilities, sit with the team, understand what all uh, possibilities we have, what all areas we can get into. Another thing is, yes, cash flow is very, very important. Has to be well calculated. You should know, where it's going, what's happening, a better control over there. And more than anything, I think your team and because it's very important to have the team together, making them understand that this change is coming. And I've seen even in my team and many of my friends that I discussed with about these issues, uh, many of the teams are internally not ready to accept this change is coming. A lot of them are still thinking that, okay, one fine day we'll go back to office and things will be normal, and it's not. It's not going to be the same. I pray it will be. I really wish it should be same, but at least for a year to come, at least for 1 year, I don't see it's going to be the same. So accepting that change, adopting the new ways, I think it has to start from us as an entrepreneur, and then inspire the team and with accepting the change. Like, that's required very well, and we can definitely navigate. Another point here is synergy is the key. I could see that I was working on this project with on the facial side, on the robot side, on the controller side, but at some point, an industrial zone next to my company was blocked because of there were some cases declared later on was declared that it was a false alarm, that they opened it again. But I had to go and talk to my friend who owns another company. Company is called Laser Technology, and we could actually still continue manufacturing these products and deliver. But I think synergy, alliances, and that's how we can move together now, move forward now, because you never know what's coming. But if you are together, you can still bear it all, and move further. That's what I think.
Wow, that's very, very helpful and very well put. Thank you so much, Swapnil. Mayank?
Just to go off Swapnil's last point, I think that is an excellent point. We really need to look at ourselves as, agile machines that can be moved and corrected as per the situation on the ground, especially when it comes to collaborating with our, competitors, with our peers in the industry, especially in the small and medium size, because as we know, there's our industry is relatively, at least when it comes to aerospace, is relatively still nascent. But we need to now really collaborate. I can speak again for myself. There's about 7 different processes we handle. Out of those 7, there are only 2 that we do in-house, and 5 actually being outsourced. So I believe that this is a model, a win-win model for the industry to try and emulate, where instead of 2 SME guys fighting for scraps, you're kind of joining hands together and instead taking value from the OEM, or instead taking value from the large company that was earlier pitting you 2 against each other. So I think there needs to be a mentality shift in that sense. Again, if I may go out on a limb and say that for a lot of the colleagues in SME who are slightly more grizzled and experienced, I would say that people kind of need to toss out their preconceptions and their notions, their well-established notions about what worked, what didn't work, because that's something which I personally hear a lot. That, hey, look, I have 20 years of experience. I've done all this before. It's not going to work, so I'm not even going to try it. So I think that needs to be re-looked at, because things that were working, things that did not work in 2002, 2004. There's no guarantee that it won't work in today's age. So I think people need to perhaps introspect a little as a business. How is your model working? What are the ways in which we can through low effort, what are the low hanging fruits we can kind of pluck. So, those are the points that I would like to touch upon. Overall, though, for me, I'm pretty optimistic. I don't think, we are seeing a global pandemic to the scale of, let's say, the Black Plague or anything. Ultimately, there was a lot of, I think, overhype and fear that was pervading the economy and the country previously, which today, touch wood, we have started to see that things are not so bad. Hopefully, let's hope it continues this way and it doesn't start to escalate. But back in March, we were saying, oh, exponential growth curve. Everything's going to go for a 6. We've not seen any of that. We've not seen exponential growth curves in any single country. Our hospitals have managed to cope. So I think that we will be able to bounce back fairly. The companies, especially the companies that had a slightly conservative approach, they had some cash in the bank, for a stormy day. Those companies should certainly stand to benefit once this situation lifts up. In a way, I mean, it's a very crude analogy, but in a way, this is almost like chemotherapy for the economy. If you were a good company, you suffered and then you emerged okay. If you were a bad company, you suffered and died and you simply did not emerge. So you are left with, a body with good cells, with the bad ones hopefully eliminated. And I know that's a slightly crude example, but that's how I look at it. So, I'm certainly very positive, both in terms of the stock market as well as manufacturing. I think we will be bouncing back. For us at Wave, we are in fact planning to expand our capacity extremely quickly. We want to continue servicing our international customers. So I don't think this crisis can put a stop on that.
Wow. We started this conversation and this series. I didn't know that we'll be able to come up with, such insightful and helpful and optimistic points that we have been doing, and especially we have been able to do today. Uh, I'm immensely grateful to you, Mayank and Swapnil. Um, these are very prescient and actionable insights that are helping all of us. And today's conversation has again taken this dialogue many, many steps forward. And the purpose behind this conversation is to have voices from the industry speak about what's happening on the ground, what are the real uh, issues and solutions. People who, as Nassim Taleb, the author of The Black Swan, says, people who have the proverbial skin in the game. And I'm so glad we had this conversation today. This is really going to help us all. Thank you so much again, Mayank and Swapnil. Thank you to our attendees who have taken their valuable time to be with us today. All the best to all you guys and ladies and gentlemen. Heartfelt thanks once again. See you next week. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.